Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we will talk about the Varangian Guard, who were these Norse warriors that became one of the most famous military units in medieval history. Although Varangians served the Eastern Romans as early as 874 AD, the unit we know today as the Varangian Guard was formally established by Basil II in the late 10th century. In 986 AD, Basil II suffered a devastating defeat when his army was ambushed by Samuel of Bulgaria at Trajan's Gate. This defeat weakened his authority, and shortly afterward, Vardus Phocas the Younger launched a rebellion in Asia Minor. After 2 years of rebellion, Basil needed strong, reliable forces, and in 988, he turned to Vladimir I of Kiev, who had ruled the Kievan Rus since 980 AD. Basil offered Vladimir the hand of his sister in marriage on the condition that Vladimir would convert to Eastern Orthodox Christianity and send 6,000 of his veteran warriors to aid the empire. Between late 988 and 989, all 6,000 Varangian warriors arrived in Constantinople. With their support, Basil II crossed the Bosphorus and, after months of hard fighting, defeated the forces of Vardus Phocas. The Varangians proved instrumental in many of his victories. Phocas himself reportedly suffered a seizure and fell from his horse during the siege of Abydos, and by October 989, the remaining rebels surrendered. After the rebellion, Basil grew distrustful of his native Eastern Roman guardsmen whose loyalties could shift on a whim. Instead, he chose to integrate the Varangians who had helped him crush the rebellion into his personal guard, men who swore oaths of loyalty he knew they would never break, establishing the first of the Varangian Guard. The recruitment for the Varangian Guard was rather straightforward. Whenever a former member was either discharged from service or the emperor passed releasing them from their oath, they would return home and share their stories as well as show off the wealth they accumulated while serving in the Guard. This would draw individuals and small groups of Norsemen to make their journey to Constantinople, as well as some were still acquired by alliances providing men or tribute arrangements. Once they arrived at Constantinople, those with reputations as disciplined, strong, and loyal warriors would be selected for training. The Varangian Guard operated under a strict and highly organized command structure. At the top was the Oculotus of the Varangians, a senior Roman officer who served as the direct link between the Guard and the Emperor himself. Beneath him were seasoned Varangian captains, men who had proven themselves in battle and earned the trust of both their comrades and the imperial court. These officers oversaw the daily training, discipline, and readiness of the Guard. The Varangians were stationed primarily in Constantinople, garrisoned in barracks near the imperial palace so they could be summoned at a moment's notice. While their foremost duty was to protect the emperor and his household, they were often deployed abroad to lead assaults, guard treasuries, or act as elite reinforcements in major campaigns. Over time, the Varangian Guard's armor evolved into a blend of Norse and Eastern Roman influences. In their earliest days under Basil II, most Varangians arrived equipped in traditional Norse fashion: ringmail armor, round shields, conical helmets with nasal guards, with their signature Dane axes and swords. As they became more integrated into the Eastern Roman military system, their gear began to evolve. Chainmail was supplemented by Roman-style lamellar and scale armor, providing better protection against arrows and strikes. Their shields also transitioned from round shields to more elongated kite shields. And by the 11th and 12th centuries, many Varangians wore richly decorated lamellar cuirasses, metal strip vambraces and leg guards, steel helmets with face guards, and keeping their signature Dane axes for breaking shields and armor alike. While their main role in battle was to serve as the emperor's elite bodyguard, they were also a flexible force able to serve as both frontline infantry, fighting in the style of their famous near-impenetrable Norse shield wall, and as heavy shock infantry, charging into the flanks and using their Dane axes to rout the enemy from the battlefield. The Varangian Guard were among the highest paid soldiers in the entire Eastern Roman Empire, earning wages in pure gold solidi. Their pay, bonuses from campaign plunder, and the famed palace plunder tradition made service in the Guard immensely lucrative. Many Varangians sent their wealth back home to Kievan Rus, Scandinavia, or later England, funding the construction of halls, churches, and small fortresses. During their off-duty lives in Constantinople, they would spend their free time in taverns and markets of the capital, proudly displaying foreign jewelry, gold inlays on their weapons, and fine robes. Despite their rowdy reputation, they were deeply respected, seen as symbols of unwavering devotion to the emperor and the might of the empire itself. While there were many notable Varangians, the most famous of them all was Harald Hardrada, the future king of Norway. Harald was a Norwegian prince who, after a failed attempt to restore his brother to the throne, went into exile in Kievan Rus, and later joined the Varangian Guard in Constantinople around 1034 or 1035 AD. During his time in the Guard, Harald distinguished himself in numerous campaigns across the Eastern Roman Empire, earning fame for his fearlessness and tactical skill. Within a decade, he rose rapidly through the ranks. Some sources claim he became commander of the entire Varangian Guard, though he likely still served under a senior Roman officer. Despite his success, Harald's favor at court declined after the death of Michael IV and during the turmoil between Michael V and Empress Zoe. Harald was arrested and imprisoned. Sources differ on why. Some claim he was charged with defrauding the imperial treasury, while others say he seduced a noblewoman and others accuse him of murder. His release is equally uncertain, with some accounts suggesting that he was freed during a revolt in Constantinople, likely by his fellow Varangians, and his Norse sagas would claim that he personally dragged Michael V from his sanctuary and blinded him. After his release, Harald returned to Kievan Rus, where he had sent the wealth he accumulated in Eastern Roman service for safekeeping. Much of this fortune came not only from his campaigns, but also from the Guard's traditional right of palace plunder, which allowed him to take treasure from the imperial palace upon an emperor's death. And according to his sagas, Harald would have taken part in this 3 times, under Romanos III, Michael IV, and Michael V. To keep this from turning into a video about Harald Hardrada, I will summarize the rest of his story briefly. Returning to Kiev, he married Princess Elizabeth of Kievan Rus, then took his amassed wealth and followers to Norway, where he secured the throne as sole king in 1047 after his nephew's death. Over the next 2 decades, Harald expanded his realm and solidified his rule before launching an invasion of England in 1066. There, at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, he would be killed fighting the forces of Harold Godwinson, bringing an end to his story and cementing his place in history as the last great Viking king. After Harald's death in 1066, the Varangian Guard would soon see a major shift in its ranks. With the Norman conquest of England, many exiled Anglo-Saxon warriors seeking refuge and purpose made their way to Constantinople and joined the Guard, bolstering their ranks. However, in my opinion, these new troops would lead the Guard to its second most devastating defeat in their history. In 1081, as part of the Roman-Norman Wars, Duke Robert Guiscard would lead an invasion of Roman-controlled Balkans. In October of 1081, Robert had already been besieging the city of Dyrrhachium all summer long, but the stubborn defenders held out despite Robert's constant catapult and ballista fire, and use of siege towers to try and take the walls. When Roman reinforcements under Emperor Alexios I Komnenos arrived with his army and bodyguard of roughly 2,000 Varangian Guard, predominantly Anglo-Saxon, Robert would meet them in battle on the 18th. For the battle, the Varangian Guard had orders to march in front of the main line, while archers would follow close behind, only moving in front to fire volleys, then retreat back behind them, and this tactic would continue until the armies were about to clash. Robert would send his elite Norman cavalry down the center to try and make the Varangians break ranks by feigning retreats, but the overwhelming volley fire and discipline of the Varangians caused this tactic to fail, for now. The Normans then suddenly sent their right wing into the Varangians' left. The Varangians, though, would hold the line until the Romans' left flank caught up and led a counter-assault, driving back the Normans' right, disintegrating it and routing them. This, though, would be where the battle for the Romans and the Varangians would go downhill. While the Romans and Varangians on the left were doing well, the Romans and Varangians in the center and the right flank had been engaging in skirmishes with the opposing Normans. And when the Norman left collapsed, the Varangians on the right, now heavy Anglo-Saxon Varangian Guard, would see the Norman knights were in danger of being outflanked, and broke ranks, and chased after them with their Dane axes. They chased horses, on foot, in heavy armor. This, of course, caused the Varangians' line to break and overextend, leading to Norman spearmen and crossbowmen to flank them, and inflict heavy casualties. Not to mention the very knights they were chasing to turn around and begin a countercharge of their own. With the Varangians breaking ranks and their now inevitable slaughter, this caused the Roman line to break and their army would begin to be routed. The surviving Varangians tried to take shelter in a church, but the Normans just set it on fire, and all remaining Varangians would die in the blaze. This would be the most devastating defeat up to this point in their history, losing all of the 2,000 veteran Varangian Guard to the same reason the Anglo-Saxons lost to the Duke of Normandy, William the Conqueror, by breaking ranks and chasing after horses on foot. You would think the Anglo-Saxons would have learnt after the first time, but unfortunately this is a case of history repeating itself. Despite the loss of Dyrrachium, the Varangian Guard were far from finished. Within a few years, fresh recruits from Scandinavia, Kievan Rus, and England had replenished their ranks, restoring their strength. Over the next century, they fought in campaigns across the empire, crushing the Pechenegs at Livonian in 1091, clashing repeatedly with the Seljuk Turks in Asia Minor, and participating in battles against Hungarians and Serbs under John II and Manuel I. While they weren't invincible and suffered setbacks along the way, their skill in battle kept them at the forefront of the Emperor's forces. For over 100 years, the Varangians retained their fearsome reputation, but in the 13th century, they would face a foe they weren't expecting: fellow Christians during the Fourth Crusade, which would mark their most devastating defeat. The Fourth Crusade was initiated in 1198 by Pope Innocent III with the primary objective of reclaiming Jerusalem from Muslim control. To achieve this, the Crusaders sought the assistance of the Republic of Venice for naval transport. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, the Crusaders were unable to pay the Venetians the agreed upon sum, so the Venetians proposed an alternative method. The Crusaders would assist them in capturing the Christian city of Zara, which had rebelled against the Venetian authority. Despite the city's Christian status, the Crusaders agreed, leading to the sack of Zara in 1202. This action excommunicated the Crusaders, though the Pope later lifted the excommunication. Following the conquest of Zara, the Crusaders were further diverted from their original mission. In 1203, they were approached by Alexios IV Angelos, the son of the deposed Eastern Roman Emperor Isaac II Angelos. Alexios IV promised substantial financial and military support, as well as the reunification of the Eastern Orthodox Church with Rome, in exchange for assistance in reclaiming the Roman throne. The Crusaders agreed to assist Alexios IV, and in July 1203, the Crusaders and Venetians laid siege to Constantinople. The defenders, led by Emperor Alexios III Angelos, were initially unable to repel the besieging forces. However, the situation changed when Alexios III fled the city and Alexios IV was installed as co-emperor alongside his father Isaac II. Despite the promises made, Alexios IV struggled to meet the financial and military commitments to the Crusaders, leading to growing tensions. In January 1204, Isaac II died, and Alexios IV was deposed by Alexios V Ducat, who declared himself emperor. The Crusaders, feeling betrayed and seeking restitution, laid siege to Constantinople once more in April 1204. The Varangian Guard played a significant role in the defense of the city. Stationed at key defensive positions, the Varangians led a hard but ultimately futile resistance against the Crusaders, and despite their best efforts, the overwhelming force of the Crusaders led to the city's fall. The Crusaders looted and destroyed much of the city, with the Varangian Guard suffering significant casualties during the siege. Some sources suggest that the Varangians fought valiantly to the last man, with others indicating that they were overwhelmed, and while many were killed, many others were captured. Following the sack of Constantinople, the Eastern Roman Empire fragmented into several successor states, including the Empire of Nicaea, the Empire of Trebizond, and the Despote of Epirus. In 1261, the Empire of Nicaea under Emperor Michael VIII recaptured Constantinople, restoring the Eastern Roman Empire. While there is no direct evidence of the Varangian Guard being reformed, some scholars speculate that remnants of the Guard or similar northern mercenaries may have participated in the efforts to reclaim the city. However, by the 14th century, the Varangian Guard had largely faded from historical records, with only sporadic mentions of Nordic mercenaries serving in various capacities. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. This is my first attempt at a much more long formatted video, so hopefully I didn't do too bad. I appreciate you all for listening. Have a wonderful day.